So welcome to the second day of our OneWiSH International Women's Day event of 2023. Melissa, who do we have today?
Yes, hi, Tamara, and hello, everyone. So yes, so today we have a panel discussion, which has been done in collaboration between OneWiSH and the IOSH Chiltern branch. So I'll just say a little bit and then I'll hand over to our moderator today. So I'm Melissa Mark Joyce. I am an executive committee member of OneWiSH and have been involved in the planning for this year's International Women's Day week of events, actually. So we did it a bit different this year. And I'm also, I have the privilege of being the chair for the IOSH Chiltern branch. So as we were planning our Chiltern branch events for the year, I put in the calendar, we wanted to do something for International Women's Day. So working with the IOSH team and working with OneWiSH team, it was agreed we'll do a joint event, which I'm a huge fan of collaboration. So this has been the outcome. So looking forward to today's discussion. We have a great suite of panelists. So without further ado, I will want to introduce Usheril, who is actually a member of our Chiltern branch committee, who will be moderating today. So Usheril, over to you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Melissa. Hello, my name is Usheril Matta. I'm a committee member of the IOSH Chiltern branch, and I currently work for the NHS. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this International Women's Day event organized by OneWiSH in collaboration with IOSH Chiltern branch. Today's topic is embracing equity to be future fit. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for joining us. We have a wonderful team of panelists, as Melissa said, that will be discussing the topic. But before we'll start, I would like to inform you that the session is recorded and participants will be muted. Please put your questions in the Q&A box and we'll pick them up later in the session. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists for today. First, we have Rita Hausken, founder of Shestainability and an award-winning executive coach, advisor, and speaker who has coached women on how to take their seat at the table and confidently share their ideas and visions. For 20 years, Rita worked as a sales director in press, covering the oil and gas industry, and in 2017, she resigned to start her own coaching company. Rita holds a number of professional certifications. She's the chair of Leaning Equity and Sustainability, co-founder of Women Building a Sustainable Future Limited. We also have Heather Beach, who is the founder of Healthy Work Company. She's fascinated by what makes people thrive in life and the part work can play in this. An ex-director for a global company where she ran their health and safety businesses publishing magazines, running conferences and information services. She now runs Healthy Work Company, working with businesses such as ITV, Luton Airport, The Telegraph to support well-being strategy and training. Recently qualified in relational organization Gestalt, she has featured on TV and in national press looking at mental health. I'd like to introduce Lawrence Webb. He's currently the Safety, Health and Environment Strategy Director for Costain Group, the Sustainable Infrastructure Solutions provider. In this role, Lawrence is also a well-being advocate and champion for both Costain and businesses in the community. Lawrence has almost 30 years of experience in health, safety, and environmental management. A chartered fellow and president of the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health, IOSH, he utilizes an engaging and practical approach to HSC implementation with experience from a wide range of industries, specializing in construction. Next, we have Louise Hosking, who is the director and owner of Hosking Associates, co-founder of OneWiSH and immediate past president of IOSH. Louise is well known as an IOSH approved training provider and risk management specialist, bringing with her over 29 years of experience within a variety of blue chip and public sector organizations. Her aim is to help organizations to create healthy, happy, and safe workplaces that enjoy all the benefits of operating in a sustainable and environmentally friendly manner. And finally, we have Melissa Mack-Joyce. Melissa is currently the Associate Director, EHS, UK and EMEA for LabCorp, a global life sciences company. Melissa is deeply passionate about access to STEM education for young girls and deepening the impact of the HSC discipline in the workplace. As a result, she's chair of IOSH Chiltern Branch Committee, IOSH Council member, Executive Committee member of OneWiSH, and past chair of Women's Energy Network, Young Women Energized Program. Thank you all for being a part of the panel discussion on embracing equity to be future fit. And we'll kick off by asking you to tell us about your specific network or group and what the focus areas of your network are around equity. We'll go in no particular order, just start with the person on the left-hand side of my screen, Melissa.
Yes, so thanks. So actually, I'll say briefly from 2 points of view, because Louise is also on the call, so I'd like her to speak more about OneWiSH. So, as you've shared, I'm involved in both OneWiSH and IOSH. And for me, with OneWiSH, fairly new organization. So we're the Global Coalition of Networks for Women and Inclusion in Safety and Health. And, our remit is really around, providing access and visibility to OSH professionals, especially, from a diversity and inclusion perspective. So for example, today's session, this week of events is around, enhancing and increasing the communication in the space around ED&I. And I know we'll get more into that today. What I've loved about being part of it is, we've been in conversations across the globe. We've given access to people to speak about their experiences, their challenges, the things that have gone well, so they can be inspiration to others, so we can learn from others and also influence organizations and communities. The other thing I'll mention, we've been involved in some of the government related items. So for example, last year, we provided a response to the consultation for the UK government about women in healthcare. So that's just one example. And then from an IOSH perspective, as you said, I'm a member of the Chiltern branch. I'm also a member of council, and IOSH, the Global Institution for Occupational Health and Safety, of which we have two, president and the immediate past president here. It's really about, enhancing the OSH profession. So of course, for that, ED&I is an important aspect. So I think, IOSH is doing a lot in that space, and OneWiSH is doing a lot in that space as well. So I'm glad to be representing both. So that's it.
Thank you, Melissa. Yeah, the next person is Rita.
Hello there. I am so excited to be here. It's kind of a new community here. And I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me in together with the organization that I am representing, which is Lean in Equity and Sustainability. So just briefly about who we are. Our mission is to empower women in male-dominated sectors to be able to build a sustainable future. Our guiding principles are built on 3 United Nations sustainability goals, which is number 5, which we're all aware of, which is gender equality. Then it is number 7, which is about affordable and clean energy for all. And then it's number 9, which is a climate action. So obviously, as you hear in our name, equity is a driving force. And we truly believe that none of these 3 goals, or probably none of the, I believe it's 17 goals, can be delivered on without equity. We believe that equity is the glue, the foundation for everything that we're doing. And what we what we then do is to say that equity is the component that makes diversity and inclusion possible. So just to bring into how does that look like for us in our organization. So the way of which we're running our organization, we are international, and obviously the best ways for us to meet would be virtual, right? So we assume that everyone can meet virtual, and that's where we are conveying a lot of the training and support. But what we started to understand is that there are certain cultures and women in certain cultures that do not find the virtual space safe. So we could do as so many organizations do, and then say, well, sorry, but we cannot accommodate you then. Whereas we say, well, equity is to bridge, it is to make it possible for us to meet people where they're at. That meant that some part of our organization had to work on bringing people together in the physical room. So that means that our agenda is the same to deliver certain things, but how it's being done, which is the equitable thinking, will be different. So that is just to illustrate how we kind of work in our own organization. What we're doing on the outside from lean and equity and sustainability is to educate organizations, and in particular also during conferences, what equity means. Because I believe this is the biggest misunderstood letter. Is it equality? Is it equity? What does it mean? And it's like kind of disappearing in between diversity and inclusion. And the focus on equity is important because it's equity that recognizes diversity. We can have a lot of diversity, but without equity, we don't know basically how we can support the very diverse backgrounds so that they can have equal opportunities. So that's basically what we're doing in our organization.
Yeah, thank you, Rita, so much for that. And I'm sure you give us a bit more when we start the panel discussions. Next person we have is Heather Beach.
Hello, I'm really delighted to be here today, and I'm apologising because when I sent you my biog, the biog I sent you was for my main business and it didn't even mention what I do for women in health and safety. So I started Women in Health and Safety in 2015. We have around 3,900 members of our LinkedIn group, and around 1,300 members that are on our mailing list. And what we do is we run events mostly for women. And it's a really interesting point how this equity actually fits into this, because one of the things that we first established was that we were running them after work. And we were running them after work generally in London. And women started to say to us, I have to get home, you know, and I, at the time when I first started this group for women, I was working for an events organizer, and that events organizer often organized networking opportunities for staff. They were golf days generally. They happened during the day, and people, generally men, went off quite happily and spent the day at this networking event. And yet we didn't have anything similar when it came to women. So one of the things we've been grappling with in the network is how we accommodate for that. And obviously online does help us when it comes to being able to run events. But the other thing that we've done recently, which is taking off unbelievably, and one that I didn't expect would go as well as it has, but it kind of fits in with this discussion, is something called Safety First. Louise was kind enough to attend our first one when no one turned up. Thank you, Louise. But we now have them running all around the country, and we have about 10 set up over the next couple of months. They are just informal meetups for a couple of hours in a local place. And that is going so well because it's much easier for women to attend, given all the other responsibilities we know that women have over and above the day job. So it's quite labour intensive for us to organise all of these various events. And actually, generally, they're attended by maybe 10 people, but it's really, really working. So we're intending to kind of pursue that. The other things that we've done have been mentoring. We've also supported women in moving up the professional ladder by, you know, explaining how and supporting them with how to get the next level up to IOSH. We really, I think, helped last year with improving the numbers of women that applied to join IOSH committees, for example, and that was very much supported by Louise, who jabbed me and said, come on, send something out, send something out. So we did, I think we sent a lot out about that, and that really, really helped things. So we kind of respond to what people want from us. We were set up originally because there just weren't women at networking events in health and safety. It was all men. And so we, by setting up a safe place for women to come, we started having these conversations about why not and what's missing for career development in general for women. So please do join us. If you're not a member, I'll pop a link in to enable you to join. And there's no membership fee. So it's all done by happy volunteers. Thanks very much for inviting me.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, I've joined Women in Health and Safety, and thank you for highlighting that as well. I didn't say that in your bio. The next we have Lawrence Webb.
Yeah, hi everybody. Really good to be here. Interesting session this for me, because although, as you said in the introductions, I'm the president of IOSH, I'm actually going to take my IOSH hat on and put my day job Costain hat on instead, because what I'm hoping to share through the discussions today is the fact that we, as an organisation, have actually been on this journey for some time now, and we've got a number of targeted networks. One of which is the Women's Network, which is really diverse and varied in its membership, because we have people from right across the organisation of roughly 3,500 men and women who are very much there to champion through a steering group the fact that you know, we can only move forward as an organisation in a typically or traditionally male-dominated industry if we are striving towards equity and not just sticking with that sort of equality banner. And we're going to talk all through that, obviously, in the next 3/4 of an hour or so. But the Women's Network was created to basically encourage and facilitate the hugely talented women in our business to be able to pursue the career aspirations within an inclusive environment. But backing up what Rita said earlier, it's all about the specifics of what individuals actually need to be able to do that. So, you know, everything from networking events, a dedicated portal, case studies to bring things to life, various resources and techniques to enable that tailoring of what's available and what needs to be made available, so that those individuals can really be at their best and thrive in our organisation. So I'm looking forward to talking a little bit more about that shortly, but hopefully just as a bit of an introduction, that's where I'm coming from today. So really looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. So looking forward to hearing a bit more about the innovations from your Women Network. And last but not least is Louise Hosking.
Hi, yeah, what an amazing panel this is today. I'm really excited to be here. So yeah, great introduction from Melissa to OneWiSH. And that was really born out of some discussions that I had with Malcolm Staves, who runs health and safety in L'Oreal, and he was talking about how he wanted to bring more women into health and safety. It's not just women, people with more sort of feminine traits of compassion and empathy and, you know, collaboration, you know, as those people with those kind of feminine traits have got all of that in spades, and they make really great health and safety professionals, because, you know, what we're kind of reinventing our profession post-pandemic, I think. And, you know, those skills are the skills that are shining through to demonstrate how we can add value to our organization. So we're not just the, you know, compliance police anymore. We're so much more than that. So Malcolm and I, we were trying to do some work with STEMs, and then the pandemic came along, and we said, you know what, we can do something else. And we created the coalition to really bring, you know, to do what we're doing today, and to bring people together from across the world just to talk about this subject, on the basis of we're so much stronger together. And yeah, I mean, Heather, I loved what you were saying about me nudging you. So I was nudging similar groups all the way around the world as well. So, you know, we had some really great results just by promoting potential routes into leadership for women through the groups that are part of the coalition. And we had some really great success with Heather and other groups when actually the IOSH board were looking for new members and new trustees. And we ended up with a phenomenal result, because they actually, you know, took the banners off of all the CVs, and when they revealed all the CVs, the final 5 were all women. So when we did that, we had a great result. And for me, that just demonstrates, if we create visibility and we need to invite women into the space. It's much harder for, you know, I personally find networking quite hard, and I'm quite an out there person. So, you know, everything that Heather's been talking about is so important, and networking and creating a network of support is so important for women, because, you know, it's those quiet thinkers that are going to be the innovators that we need, that are going to, you know, create the solutions of tomorrow. So it's, you know, all of these things is sort of building this network. And I think, you know, me being president last year, you know, I kind of ran at that hell for leather, because I'm still only the 7th woman in 76 years. So, and Lawrence was always a great support to me, and hopefully I'm supporting Lawrence this year. So yeah, great to be here.
Thank you so much, Louise, for highlighting that. We'll just move on quickly, and thank you for telling us about your networks. We'll just move on quickly to the next question. And some of it we've touched on a bit. We continue to hear about EDI, equality, diversity, and inclusion. And we also hear about equity. And so we'd like to know, what's the difference between equity and equality, and why does it matter? And why is it important? Rita, can you lead on that question, please?
Yeah, definitely. Like I shared earlier, we see that there is very little understanding about the word equity. There is a lot of kind of understanding of equality, but not equity. And if we are thinking about the differences, is equality basically means that everyone have the same opportunity. And this sounds really nice, but it's not the truth. It's just not the truth. So equality is what comes first. Equality is basically looking in on, but what is need behind it? So it's like you are given an opportunity. Let's say I'm going to use my son as an example, being handicapped. So you're being given an opportunity to run a race, just like the other guys in school. Yeah, but you don't have the ability to run because your feet doesn't work in the same way. Now the question is, how can we make it even? Well, then we need to think about equity. What resources can be given to him so that he can run under the same conditions as the other one? Another way, just to bring in the difference of equality and equity, to maybe bring it into those of us who are member of, let's say, leadership team. So let's say you're invited to have your seat around the table at the board meeting. You get all the same papers, you get the same facility to get to the office, you get the same time to speak, you get the same chair. But it now turns out that this meeting is being held in Norwegian, and you don't speak Norwegian, and all the others speak Norwegian. So you've been giving everything equally like the rest, but there is a difference. Now, in order to be able to take part, you need a translator. So the way of which we can then give you the equal opportunity to let your voice being heard is to have a resource that can help you, a very good translator that understands basically what you're going to talk about, who can help you both ways and be with you all the time. That is what we're talking about. Equity is to have what makes it possible for you to take on the opportunity that you have been receiving. So that is the difference.
Thank you, Rita, for that. And it's quite interesting with the examples that you've given, so we could see where the differences lie and why it's important. And what about diversity? Is there any linkages between diversity and equity?
Yes, very much so, because diversity doesn't go anywhere without equity. They go hand in hand, because you can have, let's say you have a very diverse team, but there is still a preference of, let's say, giving men a higher pay. You are now kind of discriminating these groups in what they are given. Or let's say again that you have a, let's bring religion into the picture. Let's say you have a very diverse group, but we're living in a country that has a specific facilities around all the holidays that is regarded for that particular religion that is in that particular country. What about those who then have other religions? Are we accommodating them in the same way? So equity is to go in and understand the need of the diverse group that we have in front of us. We know that diversity is good for business. It's good for innovation. It's good for the whole thing. But mark my word, it's pretty useless if we don't bring in equity and understand what do they need in order to have their brilliant mind expressed. This is where equity is also a way of listening. It's deep listening. It's to, I'm going to ask myself, am I good enough to listen into the diverse team? Then when I listen, I can see that, there are different needs in this group, and I will make sure that each person receive what is needed so that they can go out and apply for this, whatever same leadership position, that they can go have the same opportunity. So that is the thing. Equity is kind of in the word equity. It's almost like a thing, is a resource. It's something that gives you the ability to grasp the opportunity that is in front of you. And that will look different from person to person.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rita, for that. Melissa, I know you're passionate about ED&I, and I wonder if you'd like to contribute to the discussion here.
Yeah, no, thanks. And, it's a great conversation, and it ties in well to the fact that, for International Women's Day, our theme this year is embrace equity, because I think for me, equity is the real lever for all of this. And, as Rita has explained, right, we can give everyone the same, give everyone shoes, but, my size feet is different from, others. So therefore, from a health and safety perspective, am I adding risk, for example? You know, there's many examples where we might put carte blanche policies in place and not have considered, you know, the unique scenarios of individuals. There's a really great schematic that I saw even up to this week in another session that shows, you know, 3 persons behind a wall watching a baseball game. They're of different heights. They all been given the same height box to stand on. But there's someone who isn't of the height to, you know, to see over that wall. So you've been equal. Everyone's gotten a box to stand on, but one person can't see the game. So then there is another schematic that shows where the box sizes have now been adjusted. You've made adjustments into considerations for the individuals, you know, and we'll get into it around how this ties into the OSH profession, because, you know, what arrangements am I putting in to make sure that person is safe, that person has gotten the access. And then you know, everyone can see the game. But then what I liked was the third box that showed, why have the wall to begin with? So therefore, that's then a place of inclusion and belonging where everyone feels valued and, you know, empowered. So there's a lot in this space, but, you know, I'm sure Heather or Louise will want to add, or even Laura, you know, Lawrence from a association piece, you know, as he shared with Costain. There's so much in this space that we might need like 4 hours, but, you know, I'd like to hand over to someone else to talk about it as well.
Right, thank you so much for that, Melissa. And we'll discuss this and sort of demystified the words in itself. Perhaps we can also think about, talk about what the challenges are that exist in organizations when it comes to equity, and what are some programs that organizations should have in place to address these challenges. So in more practical terms now within our organizations. Heather, would you like to contribute?
Yes, I think this is a really interesting and challenging time for organizations, because if we think about it, in the past, workplaces were organised around straight, able-bodied white men, effectively. And now we are opening that up, and we have to open it up for all the reasons that have been mentioned, and the fact that in some countries, as in the UK, we have a lack of people to fill jobs. So it's not just a question of the fact that we get brilliance when we put different people together, but also the fact that we just need to do it. And if we don't do it, we're going to be in trouble. People want to join organizations where there's diversity as well. You know, that's what candidates say. So we have to consider this, and it is a knotty problem for organizations, because what it means is, rather than treat people as I like to be treated, it means treat people as they like to be treated, which means understanding each individual, the barriers that they specifically have, and how we can support them as individuals. In my business, I run a training course called Conversations for Managers for Wellbeing. And that was quite a generic course. And now we've added to it neurodiversity, we've added disability, we've added menopause, we've added people struggling with bereavement, we've added terminal illness, because all these are unique challenges, and allowing our organizations to be flexible so that actually there aren't, for example, hard policies around sickness absence, for example, that we don't have hard policies around exactly when you have to be in the office, and that people are trained to have these conversations, because that isn't always an easy thing. We worry about getting it wrong. We worry about upsetting somebody, saying the wrong thing, and actually training people to have those conversations, I think also is just fair, because managers are human too. Organizations are led by people who have blind spots. We all have blind spots. You know, I had one pointed out to me yesterday, which was brilliant. I just run a webinar about disability in the workplace, and a lovely lady emailed me and said, I'm deaf and I couldn't hear the second participant. Would you mind making sure that it's closed captioned when you put it out on video? I hadn't been closed captioning any of my videos. I was so apologetic, But she said, that's fine. It's a blind spot. We don't see it until it's pointed out to us. So we need to have a bit of compassion as well for all of us that are operating in this space in quite a difficult situation right now. We're all doing our best. So that's all I'd like to say on that one.
Thank you so much, Heather, for that contribution. And yeah, you touched on a few topics that are quite topical at the moment. And it'll be interesting to hear what organizations are doing. And Lawrence, you talked a bit about your women's group, and it would be good to tell us more about the challenges in your organizations and what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. It's yeah, it is an interesting time, and as I said earlier, if we just keep it simple, construction and civil engineering, which is probably what Costain is known for, although we do a lot more than that. It is an industry which is 80-20 in terms of our gender balance, and we've actually been looking at this for some time. This is nothing new, because we've been fortunate to have leaders in the business that totally understand that diversity along with equity means better decision making, better opportunities, stronger workforce, happier people, and all the things that we typically quote as OSH professionals that comes out of good OSH applies to this subject just as much. And people sort of saying, well, that's just the way it is the wrong answer. It's an answer. It's not the right answer, and it certainly doesn't have to be. I mean, even in terms of setting the tone back in the school environment, you hear children talking about the fact, well, I want to do this and I want to do that, and I still have people that come to me and say, oh, safety, or oh, engineering, that never even really occurred to me until I went on to sort of further or higher education, and I just find that bizarre. So what we're trying to do is actually foster a culture where that equity is there right at the beginning of everything we do, and that's what our network does. It makes sure we've got the right people in the room, so that when we're planning what we want to do and we're designing things, and I don't mean designing buildings and road schemes, I mean designing everything we do, from workplace environments to the structure of our teams to whatever it is we're involved in, we've actually got somebody with their finger on the pulse of the fact that everybody is different. And we need to move away from sort of your typical, if you like, generics, to understanding what the specifics are. And that means you need to know your audience, right? So you need to know your people. So we're very much in touch with our line management, and actually educating and making sure that they can have what may be, as the first off, a difficult conversation, because I agree with what's already been said about the fact there's a degree of fear that you'll say the wrong thing, you'll do the wrong thing. The worst thing is you do nothing, to be honest. So putting your hand up, as Heather just said, and saying, oh, that's a missed opportunity, but thanks for that, and taking it on strengthens your line management. So our network has been involved in so many different things, from career progression to role modeling, addressing the gender gap, flexible and dynamic working, supporting those going through the menopause, those with caring responsibilities, health and well-being generally, even down to equipment design and specification. And that network is hugely powerful, but it also has its fingers into the other 5 networks, because they all overlap. Because each of those networks recognizes that we've got different people who have different needs in half a dozen communities within our bigger Costain footprint. But I think the biggest challenge is bringing everyone on the journey, because we have an ecosystem of something like 17,500 people, and that's other organizations that we either work for or work with, and they're at different levels of maturity, culture, leadership, all those things we know we need to influence to get it right. So, but we're on the case, but it's a journey.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lawrence, for that. Yeah, and talking about influencing as well other people, that's not just part of your organization. Yeah, I'll still stay with you for the next question, and that's linking it to the OSH profession. Why is the focus on equity important for the OSH profession and the workplace? Lawrence, can you lead on that?
Sorry, I beg your pardon. I'll switch myself back off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why is it important? Well, as I said earlier, and myself and Louise have spoken about this sort of endlessly over the last couple of years. Is that, you know, diversity in individuals in our profession just means that we are more influential, we have more power, we have more understanding, we've got a better opportunity to make sure that we can reflect a whole range of different sectors on the global stage, don't forget, because we're there in everything. And the more that we can empathize with the people that we're trying to work for and influence, the better that's going to be for a subject area that is just involved in everything that organizations and employers are involved in. If you think about the breadth and the depth and the skill set that's required to work right across that framework, the more we can all do that together, the better. And you know, there are things that some people are better at than others. But coming back to my know your audience, if you don't understand where those strengths and the weaknesses actually are, you can't possibly get the best out of the OSH profession, which means we won't get the best out of the influencing opportunities we've got. So equality is just as important to us, and how we're bringing people through the profession and into the profession. Of course, we want to appeal as being a profession that understands how important equity is, and not just flash that EDI badge around. We need to be able to mean it. So we need to be able to demonstrate to people that we understand it, and these are the benefits. And it's massively important for our future as a profession. Simple as that.
Right. Thank you so much for that contribution, Lawrence. And we've talked about well-being, about mental health, about programs, about flexible working. So much nuggets to take from the discussions that are already going on. And you also talked about networks. And I would like to ask Louise now why networks and associations are important and how they can help make a difference to the OSH professional.
Yeah, I think we've probably touched a little bit on networks, but that's definitely something that, you know, we created OneWiSH to really expand on. And you know, I think that if we look at what happened in the pandemic, I think all of our networks probably exploded, because all of a sudden we were able to communicate with people around the world. The very first session that we had with OneWiSH, we literally had people from Australia to Arizona on the same call, which we kind of worked out after that. There were some people on very early and some people very late, and it was probably a little bit ambitious, but actually we achieved what we wanted to achieve, and that was connecting people around the world to talk about this topic and this subject. So networking and networks are hugely important, and everybody needs that support. And I think you know, women and people with more feminine traits, you know, we can be quite sensitive to certain things, and you know, we can take things to heart. So if we're in an environment that is maybe more autocratic, it's got, you know, more male traits in there, there's, you know, potentially I'm so often the only woman in the room, and that can be quite tough. And to have a really strong network around you to basically say, do you know what, you're good enough at this, you know your stuff, you're good enough at this, that's what your network is going to do. They're going to build you up, they're going to build that visibility, and at the same time allow you to be the person that you are. You know, I personally, you know, I couldn't have done the last year that I've done as president without a really strong network around me, because, you know, as you step into those leadership roles, you're going to face challenges that you haven't faced before, and to be able to rely on a network and a support crew around you is hugely important. And I think traditionally women haven't been as good at networking for exactly some of the reasons that Heather has mentioned, and so we've kind of been a little bit left behind with that, because it's hard to push yourself forward. And I certainly, you know, I have spoken about this when I became president. It was, you know, that was a tough step to take for me. And you know, you're putting yourself out there. And I used to have, I mean, Lawrence and I just worked so closely together, and I so valued that working relationship that we had. And he knows that there were times when I was like, my face is on too many things. And I was quite glad to sort of put his face on the tea towels by the end of it. And I think that's what happens to us. So you need that network, and that network is going to spur you on and encourage you to be ambitious. And I was doing a session actually with the North East Scotland branch, and one of the delegates actually said, be selfish in your dreams, which I love. And, you know, I think the network encourages us to take bigger steps than we realize that we can.
Yeah, thanks for that, Louise. And I'll take that quote from you as well, to be selfish in your dreams. Rita, can you just, can you add to that, please, the benefits of networks and associations?
Yeah, I just want to add one thing to it, because as much as we have been or become really good in building networks, attending networks, and absolutely, in particular for us women, it's really exploded, and we see the impact. One of the biggest challenges I see in my own work is we're not good enough to leverage the networks. So we have a lot of contacts. We maybe hang out. But in my experience, when it comes to asking really for help, or can you open the doors for me? Can you do? That's when we suddenly become, it's not good to kind of misuse your friends or your network. So my invitation in particular to women out there is leverage it. Yes, go from that selfish perspective of being selfish is looking after yourself. And if you do that, you will look after somebody else as well. So that's what I would like to say. Make sure we leverage it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that contribution, Rita. I think I've got a hand up. Is that yours, Rita? Someone else got their hand up. Melissa.
Yeah, I want to come in there because such great conversations. So as I said at the start, so I'm part of the OneWiSH team, so I was part of the planning of this, but I'm actually connected to all of the networks here. So except Costain. So Costain is an organization. So yeah, but part of IOSH, part of OneWiSH, part of Women in Health and Safety, and also part of Lean Inequity and Sustainability. So I've personally gotten so much from being part of a network. So and from two perspectives, right? So I'm new to the UK technically, you know, I've been back in the last 4 years. And IOSH, I joined IOSH when I came here, and I went onto the mentoring platform, and who I connected with, Louise Hosking. I don't know you, Louise, from Adam. So, and she was an amazing guide. You know, I did not know she was vice president or anything like that. It's just, I reached out to 3 people. Louise was the only one who came back. And she's been such a guide for me personally, right? And because of her stay, I joined IOSH, Chiltern Committee, Council, etc. So I've really seen the value of networks and association, and I try to leverage that by giving other people the access and opportunity as well. So if you want to volunteer, if you want to give back, which is something I'm passionate about, because some of us are more along in our career, being part of an association or a network or a group is a great way also to give back. So we have IOSH people on the call, OneWiSH people on the call, Women in Health and Safety, etc. Oh, and people who may not be part of it, I highly recommend joining one. You learn from others. I've learned so much from being on the WhatsApp group with Lean In, Equity and Sustainability. That group is amazing. The things I pick up from that WhatsApp group, I just have valued it so much. And then, so that's networks and associations. And the piece around the OSH profession and why we wanted to talk about this, to be future fit. So going back to the team, it's about the equity piece. And, Lawrence talked about it. I'd love to hear Heather's views it as well. The programs we design, the things that we design in the workplace, things like PPE, coveralls. I used to have to wear a size, say, medium coverall, and I was small then. Let's not talk about that now. And it was big and bulky. I had to roll up the legging 3-4 times, etc. The PPE size was too big. Some of that has changed over the years. But what's the risk that was putting in place? So when we're designing elements, when we're designing programs, we have to think about the workplace, the people who we have, and bring that equity element into it. So it's just so multifaceted. And for us as OSH professionals, we have so much opportunity to influence the workplace more now than ever, that I think playing in the equity space, being part of networks and associations is so critical. But I'll pause there. I saw Lauren's hand was up, and then I'd love to hear Heather's piece on it as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Melissa. Lawrence.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think I'm not going to repeat what's already been said, because I'm in exactly the same place as everyone else. But I think something else that network brings, there's two things really. First of all, it gives you an opportunity to compare and contrast, because your answer might not be, as I said earlier, the only answer. It might just be the answer you've got at the moment. But the brilliant thing about networks is if you've got a network that is valuable, that adds value to you personally, rather than all these people that perhaps you just sort of accept invites from that really you never sort of talk to. If you've got a really valuable network, and there's sort of openness and trust to be able to have conversations where you have got that healthy challenge, it's brilliant to be able to compare and contrast, because there are so many variations and so many different ways to do things. And I think that sort of leads into the second point, is the fact that you have an opportunity to share real world examples and sort of case studies that people have actually had. And that's the bit that brings this whole subject to life, because otherwise it's very one-dimensional. Yeah. So once you get that 3 dimensions, and you've got a number of different people saying, well, actually, we're all on the same page, we've all got the similar issues, but you know what? We've actually got three different examples, 3 different ways that we can move forward. That's hugely empowering, and it's one of the reasons that Costain does so much work actually with business in the community, because it's that network in the well-being environment and those organizations who sort of bring so much to the party that makes us go back and challenge ourselves and say, well, actually, not just for the OSH profession, but for us as a business and what we're trying to do in the world in particular of health and well-being, but also the sort of subject area of today, and looking at the equity aspect, it's given us loads to actually go away and think about. And we haven't taken everything on board, but just having that open, healthy challenge, I think that's a great place to be, and that's something else that networks definitely brings to the party for me.
Right, thank you for that addition, Lawrence. And Heather, would you like to add?
Yeah,
I'm keen to hear your view.
Yeah, so I think it's great what Lawrence said about difference, actually, because for me, I hadn't thought about that, but I like that, because for me, it's about finding the same. So it's about the fact that, if you don't recognize yourself in the networks that already exist, you sort of don't realize what's possible, and you sort of feel quite alone. And I know people have shared with me that before women in health and safety came along, they felt very alone in their positions because they didn't know other women that were doing this role. So that ability to be able to look at someone else and see, that's how they do it, and they're in sort of a similar position to me, I think has been really, really helpful for people. And but it's true what Lawrence says, there's a lot of difference in that as well. There's a lot of different ways that people think, different ways that people approach a situation. So I hadn't thought of that, but I like that. And I really also like what Rita said. I remember learning that there are 3 types of networker, and I'm 2 out of the 3. So one is an expert, so somebody that's an expert in a subject, somebody who is a connector of other people. And I'm always putting people in contact with each other. and the other one is a salesperson. That's the bit that I always struggle with, you know, asking people for favors, asking people for support, because it's always been a problem. Asking for help, I should have it all handled, right? And I'm sure a lot of us are in the same boat on that one. But yeah, I mean, I know that Women in Health and Safety has made a real difference to people in terms of being open and honest and being able to just have a conversation about what's really going on as well, you know, and how you feel about things. You tend to get real magic when you get a bunch of women together. So that's been my experience anyway.
All right. Thank you so much for the addition, Heather. And I'm a bit mindful of time now. So if I could just ask to give some closing tips, what one or two advice or tips can you provide to our audience on key tools to enhance the skills, knowledge, and experience to be future fit in the area of EDI? Have you got any tips or advice? Louise, can you lead on that?
Yeah, sure. I was just going to say there's some really great comments in the chat box, and Alan, it's good to see you on the line. Is that I actually, when I was handing over to Lawrence, I almost got some tea towels with Lawrence's face on, but I gave his mum and dad some coasters with his face on instead, which went down really well. But that's another story. My tips are and this is something that I've struggled with, but my mentors and my support network kept saying to me throughout last year is absolutely be yourself. Don't try and be a version of leadership that you think exists. So be authentic. And also, what is success is different for every single person. If you are a woman and you want to work part-time and you want to put your energy into your family, do you know something? That's completely okay. That makes you successful. You don't have to be the president or the chief exec or whatever. You don't have to follow a path throughout health and safety that takes you from one place and is linear. We exist in a squiggly career world. So be authentic and follow your personal route to success, because that means you'll follow something that you're passionate about and you will be successful.
All right. Thank you so much, Louise, for that. Rita, can you give your one or two tips?
Yeah, definitely. So I have two, and the first one I want to say is each and one needs to take personal responsibility. When we think about equity, since think about that as one of the main themes, equity is about really, really listening to other people so we can give them what they need. So when we are taking personal responsibility, I am to ask myself, do I really listen? Do I listen to understand, or do I listen to constantly give my thought on the topic? So that's my advice. Think about that. It's so important to create a safe environment, and there's nothing that can create a safer psychological space than when we feel that people around us are deeply listening to us and engaging in the conversation based on what is coming our way. So that is the first thing I say. Each and one take personal responsibility. DEI in itself is not something out there, it's here. And the other thing I would say is also know your own zone of genius. This goes a bit about what Louise is saying as well. Again, it's owning. Know your zone of genius. What makes you come to life in what you are doing? Share that with other people, because if other people are going to deeply listen, you also need to deeply share. And it's much easier when you're spending a bit of time with yourself and identifying, what do I love doing? What provides energy inside of me? What can I raise my hand and say, I volunteer on that because it gives me energy, not because everyone else thinks I should raise my hand. Know yourself so that you can share to others, so others knows how they can support you. So that's my 2 cents.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Rita. Some very great tips that there. Lawrence, would you like to add?
Yeah, certainly. I won't repeat what others have said, because I had some things in my mind already that have just been mentioned, but just expanding on what Rita's just said, actually, I said earlier, if you're a manager, if you're a leader, know your audience, which is exactly the same as what Rita said, but from the other perspective. Know your people, take time to understand your people, because without that knowledge, you can't possibly support them in the equity space, because you will not know the specifics about what makes them tick and what they need to succeed. The second thing is, don't be afraid to have the conversations in this area. And I mentioned that earlier. Anything new, anything challenging where people are worried they're going to say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing. At the end of the day, the worst thing is to do nothing and just leave things as they are, because that's the easy option. It's not the right. Have the conversations, even the difficult ones, because then what you'll do is you'll gain the insights that you need to develop a sound strategy that everyone can get on board with. And then, of course, this strategy has to become interwoven in everything you do. And then finally, make sure that you create a leadership shadow that exemplifies the things we've been talking about in what you say and what you do. In other words, your behaviors. Don't just, go away from today and go, yeah, that was really interesting, and I agree with everything, and then just go back to the way things are. Help your leaders, the people who are influencers in the business, create that shadow where people can actually see what we've been talking about for real, and they'll be able to relate to that, and obviously support line managers who are absolutely essential to make sure this stuff lands and it sticks properly. Those would be my three things on top of what has already been said.
Right. Thank you so much, Lawrence, for that addition. Melissa, 1 or 2 tips in the area of EDI?
Yeah, I've been posting a few things in the chat. So as people who know me would know, I'm like a podcast junkie. I love learning and, reading things and getting insights, and then, applying that in the workplace and in how I show up. So I think for me, 2 things would be around really learning more about, other people's lived experiences. So it ties in well to what Rita and Lawrence has said. And then another way of continual learning is, as I mentioned, several, there are books out there, there are podcasts, and then there are, networks and associations. As, Louise and Rita have said, there has been an explosion of them, but I think, it's valuable that they're there. And especially now that, so many things are available online and virtual, we have access to the tools. Reach out and connect with people. Don't be afraid to reach out. There's so many people have reached out to LinkedIn, coming out from hearing about, what they do, and I want to learn from them, etc. So for me, as an OSH professional, and as we continue to be future fit, embrace that continual learning. And there's so many tools for us so that we can consider equity in the things that we're doing, the programs we're recommending to our organizations.
Right. Thank you so much, Melissa. And finally, Heather, your 1 or 2 tips for the OSH professional.
So for me, it's all about becoming more self-aware in a safe environment, in order that you can have these conversations and in order that you can learn without it damaging your ego. I put a comment in the chat, and I know Lawrence hasn't had a chance to answer it, but for me, one of the key issues that we have in here is the fact that I think that many of the men feel very threatened by this conversation and don't like it. Many of my friends, even, I know perfectly well they talk about it behind my back. And, for me, if we all can get to grips with what we find challenging about this conversation for ourselves, how it damages our own sense of self or our ego or whatever it might be, through whatever means we have, whether that be reading or whether that be doing therapy or having a coach or really deep listening, but just trying to get to grips with what we find difficult about this conversation ourselves, and then daring to speak about it, because we're, as I said, we all have our blind spots, we're all only human. A bit of self-compassion as well.
Thank you so much for that, Heather. I think there's been great conversations and discussions throughout the hour. And thank you to our panelists for all the information, the nuggets, the tips that you've given to our attendees today. I would like to take a few minutes to go through any questions, either in the chat or the Q&A box. Melissa, do we have any questions?
Yeah, so mostly more comments and sharing of, you know, tips and tools, etc., which has been amazing. So thanks so much, Usheril. You've done a great job moderating. As Heather mentioned, she did post a question around, you know, how to for men not to feel threatened by this. And that's such an important point, that men have to be allies. And we can't move forward on any aspect of diversity if some other group feels excluded, right? So it's really important that we all are part of this. But other than that, there were no other questions, just lots of great comments.
Okay. I don't know if Lawrence wants a chance to answer Heather's question. So how do we get men to feel less threatened by this?
Do you know, that's a difficult one for me to answer, because I've never felt threatened by it. And I think it's because just because of the person I am, I'm sort of open to anything which others see as a challenge, difficult, you know, something that's new. So for me, I've always been of the mind that the right people in the right roles at the right time is just so massively important, and we should do whatever it takes to make sure that happens. So, you know, from that perspective, it's a difficult one for me to answer, but I would go back to what I said earlier in terms of you know, having a culture in an organization where it is a safe space, and that's been mentioned by a lot of us today in our conversations, where people can start to engage and not feel that their position, or as was said, their ego is actually being challenged. I mean, if you feel safe to speak up and at least sort of, you know, have a go at having these conversations, even if you get it wrong, the fact that you've actually opened that door, you will find that people will engage with you naturally. And I also think that that leadership shadow is so important, because if you're pushing against a closed door and you're not being inclusive in terms of the people that you're trying to engage with, it will make it really difficult. And somebody's actually put in the chat about the fact that we you know, as men, we absolutely need to be involved in all of this, because together we're a team, you know. we are a team of people all striving towards the same thing. So you don't have a team with only half the players, right? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah. That's great, Louise.
I just want to add to this, because I have been on a really interesting journey in the last 18 months. This is all about being authentic and listening. And when I became president, I was very conscious that, you know, I am quite a feminine woman as well. So I was walking into something where there's this kind of perception of what a president should be. And what I discovered as part of my journey was that actually some of the things that I talk about and I worry about, because I was very open with Lawrence during my year, I lent on Lawrence an awful lot. And what I discovered was the things that worried and concerned me, worried and concerned Lawrence too. So, you know, as a woman, people would look at me and actually say, well, you're wearing this or you're wearing that. But actually, Lawrence will back me up here. We probably had more conversations about what the males within the presidential team were wearing than what we were wearing as women. So I think that, you know, and Kathy Seabrook's on the call today, and I always think that I love what Kathy says, when we actually put in place tools that allow women to talk about this and women to thrive, we don't just raise up women, we raise a tide, because it's good for everybody. And there's lots of men that I know in my network who are single dads who have exactly the same kind of issues, that are struggling with the same things. And there's lots of men with with more feminine traits who feel exactly the same way. And I think it is all about us listening, and it's how I've learned much more about myself working really closely with Lawrence and my male mentors within IOSH, that actually if I open up, if I'm vulnerable, they're vulnerable, and actually we're having really good conversations that help all genders, not just women.
Right, thank you so much for adding that, Louise. And I'll give the final word to Rita. I saw your hand up.
Yeah, this is just a kind of comment. When we talk about allies and we constantly think about men, I want to share with you that one of the challenges that I see here in Norway, where we as women think that everything is perfectly okay, everything is equally balanced, and everything is whatever it is, I experience women not being allies. I experience women being the ones that says, are you sure? 2023. I mean, like almost like ghosting in a very specific way. And so I want to also invite women to think. So back on the topic of menopause, I hear women who have never experienced menopause in the hard way, and therefore like it doesn't exist. But if you talk to a woman who's gone through it and experienced it, and the trauma, and the fact that 1 in 10 women in the UK leave their jobs because of menopause challenges, we as women needs to be allies to our own sisters in a lot of these things. So allies needs to be used as a word towards each other as well. So I just want to bring that up as well.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for that, Rita. And I just want to thank our panelists for so much information that you've shared today. And with that, I would like to draw the session to a close and hand over back to Melissa, if you've got something to say from Chiltern branch or OneWiSH perspective.
I was just putting it in the chat. Yeah, so thanks very much, everyone. This has been amazing. As I said, yes, meeting everyone and the networks and associations that you all represent has, done so much for me personally. And I'm not selfish, that I want others to learn and grow. So this is why we wanted to do this session. So, I just want to thank Rita, Lawrence, Heather, Louise, and yourself, Usheril, for spending time on this, having this conversation, sharing things, etc. And so for everyone who joined us, reach out on LinkedIn, reach out to the different groups, and we want to hear from you. We want you to be part of our groups as well, because I know we can learn from yourselves as well. So yeah, so thanks again. And as Tamara had said at the start, one of the things we did this year, and actually thinking about equity, instead of having just one day of events, and especially on International Women's Day, where other companies were doing something, we decided we would do, smaller events during the week so that people had time to, to come and join us. And so tomorrow we have another session, another great panel of amazing women who are all leaders in the HSE space, and they'll be talking about their roles and being mentors. So looking forward to that session. And as always, our sessions are available on our OneWiSH site, recordings of not only this year's International Women's Day event, but last year, as well as our November sessions. And for our Chiltern branch members, we'll post everything on LinkedIn as well. So I just want to say thanks again for all the support, and have a great rest of the day and week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.